What's going on, guys? SMH Super Mario Hoops back with some more hoops. Today we're in part 7 of the 10-part series. We're getting closer to the end by every single episode. So today we're going to be going through the teams from 40 to 31. And without further ado, let's just get right into it. At number 40, we got the 1996-1997 Detroit Pistons. This team was led by Grant Hill, who at the time was one of the best superstars in the entire league. Joe Dumars was a bit older, but he was still actually an all-star this season. Otis Thorpe was a very productive veteran at this point. And then you also got Lindsey Hunter, who in his younger days with the Pistons was pretty solid. Theo Ratliff was a nice rim protector for this team. Terry Mills was actually a really good shooter for them off the bench. And then also Aaron McKee wasn't a bad distributor. A 54-28 record. This team actually, with that record, only got the 5th seed and ended up losing in the first round, which is unfortunate. But I know a team with Grant Hill on the squad and then also some other guys like maybe Joe Dumars and Otis Thorpe makes the team pretty solid. I would definitely like to see that team in 2K. At 39, we got the 2014-2015 Atlanta Hawks, which was one of the best teams in their whole franchise history. Paul Millsap was an all-star who averaged about 18 and 8 per game, kind of their go-to guy. Al Horford was a jack-of-all-trades type of player who averaged about 15 and 10 a night, could get you a double-double. Jeff Teague was the main distributor on this team, and just like the last two, he also made the all-star team. And even Kyle Korver made the all-star team for his amazing shooting throughout the whole season. Then you also got Damari Carroll, who with the 4 before him was actually co-player of the month for 1 month when they went an amazing 17-0. And then you also got guys off the bench like Dennis Schroeder, who's still a solid player today, and even Mike Scott as well. 60-22 on the regular season, and they actually had the best record in the Eastern Conference. Unfortunately, they fell short in the Eastern Conference Finals, but I think that considering this is probably the best Atlanta Hawks team we've seen since the turn of the millennium, I gotta put them on this list. At 38, we got the 2012-2013 Denver Nuggets. This was probably one of the best all-around teams we've seen recently. Andre Iguodala was kind of the guy that did just about anything this team needed, really. Ty Lawson was a pretty nice scorer, I believe the leading scorer on this team for the point guard spot. Then you also got Danilo Gallinari, who was good for about 16 points per game for this team. Kenneth Faried, back then famously known as the Manimal, he still is, but that's kind of like when he got the nickname, was a double-double dude. You also had Andre Miller, who was still a solid point guard off the bench. Kosta Koufis was the starting center. And then they still had some other guys off the bench, like Wilson Chandler was pretty nice. JaVale McGee, who's even better today. And then even Evan Fournier was on that team. Their team record was 57-25 on the season. Good enough for the 3rd seed in the West, which is pretty amazing. And unfortunately, though, they did lose in the first round, which is kind of surprising. They did have Coach of the Year, George Karl, on their team with their squad as well. But yeah, I just think a team that balanced, that would have such a great bench as well. Probably one of the better benches of a 2K team. At 37, we got the 2006-2007 Toronto Raptors. Now, this team's starting lineup wasn't that great, but their bench was really kind of where they picked it up. Chris Bosh was obviously the star on this team. TJ Ford played a nice traditional point guard role. Anthony Parker was good for about 14 points per game. Jorge Garbajosa actually made an all-rookie team for the squad. And then their bench is where they had guys like Andrea Bargnani. They also had Morris Peterson. Juan Dixon averaged double-digit points per game for this squad. Then you got Jose Calderon, who's always been a pretty good passer. And then also Joey Graham at a forward position. 47-35 record. That was good enough to actually get them the 3rd seed in the Eastern Conference. But just like the Nuggets in 2013, this team also, as a 3 seed, lost in the first round, unfortunately. I think it's just because they didn't have too much star power. I mean, other than Chris Bosh, they didn't have really anyone else that was elite, I'd say. But yeah, I still think this would be a pretty fun team to use in 2K. At 36, we get the 1987-1988 Utah Jazz. Now, I know this team had Stockton and Malone, but the supporting cast is really where you got to look. Mark Eaton, who was a Defensive Player of the Year in his prime. Darrell Griffith, who was probably one of the most athletic players in the league at this time. Thurl Bailey, who off the bench averaged nearly 20 points per game for this team. Bob Hansen was a really solid shooting guard for this squad, averaged over double-digit points per game. And then Kelly Tripucka actually came off the bench for this team, but in his prime, he was one of the most lethal scorers in the league. 47-35 record, good enough for the 5th seed in the Western Conference. They got to the West semifinals where they eventually lost in 7 games, but I think that this team would be more important, honestly, than the other Jazz team, because just by the eyeball test, it seems like they have a way better supporting cast than the other one. At 35, we got the 2005-2006 New Jersey Nets. Jason Kidd was the point guard and leader. He did just about everything for this team, honestly. Vince Carter was the leading scorer on this team at about 24 points a game. Richard Jefferson also averaged about 20 points per game himself. Nenad Kirstic averaged about 13 and 6 for the squad at power forward. And then Jason Collins was the starting center, with Cliff Robinson as the 6th man. 49-33 record, good enough for the 3rd seed in the East, but they did lose in the 2nd round in 5, which is pretty unfortunate. This team kind of lacked a lot of depth, but their star power was definitely there, and it's worthy of being in the game because of that. At 34, we got the 2001-2002 Orlando Magic. This team was really fun to watch when healthy. Tracy McGrady was just a man on a mission. He was leading the league in scoring a few years in Orlando. Grant Hill was the 2nd option, of course, when he was healthy. You also had Darrell Armstrong, who at this point was still a quality point guard. Pat Garrity was probably one of the best shooting power forwards in the league at this point. And then an aging Horace Grant at center. Off the bench, you had Mike Miller, who was really young and probably one of the best 6 men in the league at this time. Troy Hudson also averaged double-digit points per game off the bench. And then they also had Patrick Ewing as well. 44-38 on the season, good enough for the 5th seed. They lost in the 1st round, though, unfortunately. Really, injuries kind of killed this team, especially to Grant Hill. But I think a team with T-Mac and Grant Hill would be on the team in 2K. And they have some also solid role players as well. So I feel like they should get the nod in 2K. At 33, we got the 1976-1977 Portland Trailblazers, which is actually a surprisingly deep team. Bill Walton, who was the MVP and later Finals MVP for the whole season. Maurice Lucas, who was an all-star for this team as well. And then everyone else, like Lionel Hollins, you got Dave Twardzik, also got Bob Gross, a small forward, and Larry Steele off the bench. All of them averaged double-digit points per game, and in fact, this team had 9 players that averaged over 8 points per game. The team was 49-33 on the regular season, good enough for the 3rd seed, and they ended up winning the NBA Finals in 6 games, which is pretty remarkable. Portland's only championship to this day, so I figured they got to be on the list. At 32, we got the 2004-2005 Seattle Supersonics. This team was led by their star player, Ray Allen. Also, Rashard Lewis was a pretty good 3-and-D player and also an all-star for this team. Luke Ridnour was still young, but a pretty good point guard. Reggie Evans, one of the probably best rebounders in the league. Vladimir Radvanovich was one of the best shooters in the league as well. Jerome James was the starting center, and Antonio Daniels gave them a spark off the bench. 3rd seed in the West, 52-30 record. They ended up losing in the 2nd round, unfortunately, but a Ray Allen-Rashard Lewis duo would be really cool to use in NBA 2K. At 31, we got the 2008-2009 Portland Trailblazers. This team was led by their All-NBA guard, Brandon Roy. LaMarcus Aldridge was also an all-star caliber player. Steve Blake was a nice role player at point guard. Same thing with Joel Przybilla at center. And they had a rookie, Nicholas Batum, at small forward. The bench consisted of Travis Outlaw, Rudy Fernandez, who was pretty flashy once in a while, and then Greg Oden, once he was healthy. 54-28 record, good enough for the 4th seed in the West, but they came up just a bit short, lost in the 1st round, unfortunately. But a Brandon Roy, LaMarcus Aldridge team would be really fun to use in the game. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I would really like to hear your guys' opinions on, you know, the teams that are on here. Like, maybe like, yes, you like them, no, you know, get them out of here or something like that. But yeah, I'm gonna be putting my social media pages on the screen, so you can go follow those for any updates if you are interested. But other than that, I think that's gonna do it for part 7. I'll see you guys on part 8, and I'm out. Peace.